In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Time to put an eye on the SEC. Lots to discuss in the Southeastern Conference. Once again, seemingly every week, the game of the week is in the SEC, possibly the game of the year with Alabama and Texas A&M. A lot of intrigue, a lot of things to discuss, and to help us do that, we bring in ESPN college football and BCS analyst, works for ESPN radio throughout the day on Saturdays, tracking all the different games, and does a fantastic job. A lot of write-ups at ESPN.com. Tremendous insight on college football. Brad Edwards joins us here on the News Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Brad, Vince, and Evan here in Knoxville. How are you doing, Brad?
Doing well. Good morning, guys.
Morning. Always great to talk to you, Brad. Before we get into the Texas A&M and Alabama game, I want to see, did you get a chance to see this SI expose on Oklahoma State? And if you did,
not yet. I've heard some things, but I have not had a chance to read any of it yet.
Okay. Well, we'll save that for another time then. What about Chip Kelly last night with his debut in the NFL with that offense?
You know, I saw all the tweets from the people who cover college football, you know, kind of I told you so, and I'd hold off on it for just a little bit. I mean, it was kind of a unique situation in that the very first game, I don't think the opponent knew exactly what to expect, and I'm sure Chip has more wrinkles in his pocket. You know, he's gonna throw some other things out in coming weeks that the Redskins didn't see. But at the same time, there was an element of surprise that will not exist to the same level anyway in the future, and we'll have to see. And also, I think the fact that the Redskins had a couple of turnovers early allowed I was about to say Oregon allowed Philadelphia to really not control the clock, obviously, but control the ball and keep the Redskins defense out there for a lot of plays early and start to wear them down much sooner than you typically would be able to. So I'm a believer in Chip Kelly's offense. I think that it can have success in the NFL, not the same way it was run at Oregon, but certainly elements of it. And we already saw that last year in the NFL with things like the zone read having some success. I know that New England had some success with some hurry-up every now and then. So I think it'll work, but I don't think it's going to work as well every week like it did last night. So I would caution people to just hold up for a little bit before you make any decisions about what an incredible success that this offense is.
Joined by ESPN college football analyst Brad Edwards here on the News Sentinel Sports page. Before we get into Alabama, Texas A&M, since we were talking about Chip Kelly and his time at Oregon and in college, why don't we just segue into what Mark Helfrich and Oregon are doing right now? How much of a difference, if at all, do you see in the way Oregon has run their not only offense but their team in their first two dominant wins?
Yeah, I have not noticed a difference. I talked to Helfrich over the summer, and I asked him that question. You know, how much should we expect to see different? And he said, hopefully nothing, because you know that he was a part of developing that offense at Oregon and calling the plays with Chip Kelly, and he believes in everything that they were doing, and I don't think he has plans to change anything that you would see on the field. He obviously is a different personality. So he might run things a little bit different behind the scenes, but I wouldn't expect to see, a whole lot of difference on the field, and at least from what I've seen so far through two games. I mean, there are a couple of things I was looking for, and I saw both of them last week against Virginia. One of them was Oregon scored the first touchdown and did their whole, line up everybody off to the side of the kicker, and then judge the matchups and then go for two. We've seen them do that many, many times over the years, and they did it again against UVA. And then the other thing was a couple of times in that game they ended up in 4th and 1, and they did exactly what they would have done under Chip Kelly, which is they rushed to the line and they quickly ran a play. Now, in both cases I saw, the play got stuffed, and they didn't get the first down on the first opportunity. I think the other one was actually a 4th and goal from the 1. And they got stuff there. So, I mean, as many points as they ran up on UVA, it could have been worse if they hadn't gotten stopped on a couple of 4th and shorts. But at least from a from a strategic standpoint and from an aggressiveness standpoint, I saw Oregon look just like they had under Chip Kelly.
Brad, I was asked on an Oregon radio station the other day what had to go right for Tennessee or wrong for Oregon in order for Tennessee to pull up an upset, and I had a hard time coming up with an answer. But I'll ask that same thing to you. To keep it close, if not to pull off an upset, what has to go wrong for Oregon or right for Tennessee this weekend?
Yeah, and it's so tough to gauge Tennessee's offense based on the short fields that they were given last week, and and the points that were scored by the defense without the offense even having to go out there. So I don't know. I don't know that anybody really knows what kind of drop off there is on Tennessee's offense from last year to this year. But clearly, to beat Oregon, I mean, if you don't have the type of defense to hold them under 20, and I don't think that Tennessee has that type of defense quite yet, you're going to have to score a lot of points to beat them, and I'm just not sure that Tennessee has the guys to be able to do that in a normal situation. I mean, maybe I don't know what the odds would be against it, but maybe if Oregon came out and did exactly what Western Kentucky did last week in the first half or in the first quarter, Tennessee could get off to a lead that maybe they'd have a chance to hold on to. But right now, it's it's hard for me to sit here just having grown up in SEC country and watched Tennessee football all my life, and to utter the words that Tennessee doesn't have the talent to keep up with Oregon, because it's just a bizarre thought, because Tennessee has always had great talent, and the idea that a team like Oregon could have better players than Tennessee seems crazy, but we've reached a point where it's true, and we'll see what Tennessee can do to hang in there, but I think they're definitely going to need some help from Oregon.
Last thing on Oregon before we move on to some other SEC stuff with you, Brad. What is it about Oregon that maybe people don't talk about enough in terms of what makes them tough? Is there something that maybe is undervalued in discussion about Oregon for people that maybe don't watch every minute of Oregon football?
Yeah, I think it's their defense. And there was a time not too many years ago where they were just another Pac-12 defense that just hoped to get some stops every now and then. But over the last few years, really starting with the 2010 team that made it to the BCS championship game, they have been a really good defensive team. And you don't see that if you pay attention to traditional stats, because traditional stats are all ranked on a per-game basis. And because of the way their offense plays, and because they actually play a few other no-huddle type teams, in their conference, they get in a lot of games where their defense is out there for a lot more possessions and a lot more plays than, let's say, SEC defenses typically are. And we're going to see this start to change in the SEC as well, with the number of teams that are starting to run hurry up. But I think if you just look at yards per game allowed or points per game allowed, I think that you're totally missing what Oregon's defense is. And, of course, the other part of that is they blow out so many people before halftime. They get the backups in there in the fourth quarter for the majority of the fourth quarter. Sometimes they even get in there in the third quarter. And clearly they end up, giving up points because either the backups are in or because the starters have lost their intensity because they've got a 40-point lead. And I think if you were able to go back and just look at what Oregon does defensively when the game is in doubt, I think you'd see that this is probably the fourth year in a row that they've got a top 20 defense. And when you can put a top 20 defense out there with the type of offense they run, that's a pretty deadly combination.
Joined by ESPN College Football and BCS analyst Brad Edwards here on the new Sentinel Sports page. He's on Twitter. It's at @JBradEdwards for you to follow, talk, and get his insight on college football along with his work on ESPN.com. Brad, let's talk about Alabama and Texas A&M. A lot of criticism after Alabama's opening win over Virginia Tech about the Alabama offensive line. Is that a legitimate concern that could potentially get them beat, or is that overreaction and exaggeration?
Well, I think it's a legitimate concern because they did have three guys make their first college start in that game against Virginia Tech, and those three guys will be making their second college starts against Texas A&M. So there's no way to get around the fact that they have some inexperience, and the two guys who do have experience in the line don't line up next to each other. And because of that, this group is still learning to play together as a unit. I think the experience factor that you have at left tackle and right guard is not worth a whole lot when they have complete inexperience with the guy lining up beside them in each case. And so that's just something that they're going to need reps in order to improve, whether that's in practice or in games. I don't think there's any question they're going to get better. They have talented guys in those positions. But it's going to take time. Now, the good news for Alabama, and maybe the reason to think that it is jumping the gun to press the panic button, is that Virginia Tech may be the best defense they face all year. And if it's not, then it's going to be one of the top 2 or 3. And I think when you look at what Alabama has on its schedule for the next few weeks, they're going to, and this is including Texas A&M, which just had the ball run on them almost at will by Rice and Sam Houston State. I would think that Alabama's got a few games to get that experience before they're going to be tested again. And I think that's really what this game comes down to this weekend. Is Texas A&M, do they have the horses up front to be able to give Alabama remotely the same type of trouble that Virginia Tech did? Alabama ended up scoring 2 offensive touchdowns in that game. Very clearly, that's not going to win you a game against Texas A&M. But if Alabama's offense has the same type of success that Rice and Sam Houston State did, they'll score in the 30s, if not the 40s. And given what Alabama's defense typically does, I think it's safe to say that should be enough to win the game, even against an offense like Texas A&M.
Do you think the factor of Alabama with an extra week to prepare, Nick Saban, as we were saying during the commercial break, hunkered down in his bunker? Obviously, this is a game that is personal to him, and he has done well historically in rematch type settings.
Saban said something interesting in his press conference yesterday, which I hadn't really thought about, which is you can spend. I mean, this is paraphrasing, but you can spend all off season, coming up with strategies to defend Texas A&M, but they're not going to allow you to insert specific packages for specific situations, and that's one of the things that Saban is so good at, is coming up with different personnel groups that he's going to play in this situation and kind of force the offense into not doing what it is they want to do because of the looks that he gives them or fooling them based on what they think they see. And you can't do that when they're not huddling. I think maybe what we're all assuming is going to happen with Saban having had all this time to make adjustments is a little bit overblown, just because I'm not sure there is a lot he can do other than identify who are the 11 best players to defend this type of offense and put them out there and just plan on them playing most of the game. I mean, when he has a chance to, maybe get some different guys in there in 3rd and short or 3rd and long or whatever it might be, I'm sure he'll do it. But I think for the most part, he's just got to pick 11 and go with them. But now, I think he did learn some things, not only from the A&M game last year, but also from the Ole Miss game, as far as defending that type of offense. And maybe he will have some more undersized guys, at defensive end and outside linebacker compared to what he would normally put out there. But I'm just not sure that the extra week really made a whole lot of difference for Saban and the defense. I think that they were as prepared as they were going to be. I think in hindsight, now the benefit is probably to the Alabama offense, and especially that offensive line, to give them one more week to practice and kind of work out some of the kinks that they certainly had against Virginia Tech.
Brad, as you well know, Nick Saban always compliments the opponent, sometimes even when they don't deserve it, frankly. But he doesn't give any bulletin board material for the opposition. He was very, very, very complimentary of Johnny Manziel. Do you think that Johnny Manziel, quarterback, Nick Saban as his coach, do you think that duo could work or would work?
Johnny Manziel, the player, I'm sure Nick Saban could find a way to use him. Johnny Manziel, the personality, I can't see Nick Saban having recruited him. Because one of the things with Saban is, I mean, as great of a recruiter as he is, and you can all see in the recruiting class rankings every year, what a job he does as far as getting in top-notch players. But there are always guys who a lot of big programs are after, even guys who are in the South that Saban does not go after. And so it's not just a matter of, okay, I'm just going to, identify these are all the 5 stars and maybe the high 4 stars, and I'm going to offer all of them, and 25 will accept, and then that's my recruiting class. Saban understands that it takes a specific type of personality to adapt to what he does and kind of accept what he does, and he's not just recruiting talent; he's also recruiting a certain type of person, a certain type of mindset, and he looks for that. And I don't think Johnny Manziel is a guy he would have recruited, not because of talent, but because of the way his mind works and just his personality in general.
Brad, one more thing with you. We appreciate your time. Florida losing at Miami really hadn't looked good on offense or much better than last year. Level of concern, the red alert in Florida, 1 to 10, and how much of an issue that offense and that team is here with their slow start.
Yeah, I think that the concern for Florida is Jeff Driscoll right now in his play. Now, how much of that is due to a combination of offensive line and receivers? I don't know enough about it to be able to say. Obviously, there are a lot of times when those things are factors in the quarterback's play, and maybe make the quarterback look worse than he is. Or a lot of times those things make a quarterback look better than he is. But certainly, listening to Will Muschamp over the summer, he expected Driscoll to be much improved. He was expecting a big year out of him, and it's only 2 games in. He could still turn it around and have a great year. But right now, I would say it's a big concern just because that's the area where Florida was really expecting to make great strides this year. Having Driscoll going into his 3rd season, and you would think that the curve as far as improvement would that he would be pretty far along that curve at this point, and he's still making bad decisions. He still seems slow as far as making his decisions, and that's probably why a lot of them are bad, is because he doesn't seem to get rid of the ball at the time when he should get rid of it, and he's still got a lot of work to do. And if Driscoll doesn't get better, I think this Florida team is probably going to be a lot like last year's as far as playing a number of close games against teams that seem to have less talent than Florida does.
Brad Edwards, analyst for college football and the BCS as well. You can find his work at ESPN.com as a terrific story on the teams that can afford a loss and still make it to the BCS title game. Much more working on.
And 2 of them have already lost.
Yeah, that's right. They have, and those 2, their position hasn't changed. You still feel the same way after those losses, right?
Yeah, I do. Although I will say this, I feel better about Georgia's chances of running the table and finishing with 1 loss than I do Florida's.
Yeah.
After having watched both of them for 2 weeks, but we'll see how it goes.